Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome everyone to today's information session on the Cornell Chief AI Officer, the CAIO program. My name's Mike Pino. I'm a former partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I was an executive at General Electric and Cognizant over the course of my career. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment here to share a few details with you all about the program. I'm going to share a slide or two, so give me a moment here to pull them up. And so the Cornell Chief AI Officer Program is designed for senior executives and the business leaders who are responsible for shaping AI strategy, governance, innovation, and organizational transformation through a blend of live online learning, practical frameworks, and direct engagement with Cornell faculty and industry experts. Participants will develop the capabilities needed to lead AI initiatives responsibly while creating measurable business value. The program explores topics including AI strategy, digital transformation, data-driven decision-making, governance and risk management, organizational change, and the leadership skills required to embed AI successfully across the enterprise. AI is not just a technology shift, it's actually a complete transformation of the organization. It impacts people, process, strategy, as well as technology. So this really requires a lot of coordination and a different kind of executive, and that's why this program is so important. Participants will also join a global network of executives who are navigating many of these opportunities and challenges as AI continues to reshape the industries around the world. So that is the quick overview of the course of the Cornell CIO program. Now, a quick reminder before we get started. Please submit your questions through the session using the Zoom's Q&A button, which is at the bottom of your screen, or use the chat feature. Either way, as those questions come in, I'll be using those questions to ask Professor Girotra, and I will queue them up and I'll ask them. Please include your name if you'd like me to actually mention your name associated with the question. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Professor Karan Girotra. Professor Girotra is the Charles H. Dyson Family Professor of Management at the Cornell S.E. Johnson College of Business, and he's a globally recognized expert in innovation strategy, technology, and business transformation. His research and teaching focus on how organizations can use emerging technologies, analytics, and new business models to drive growth and competitive advantage. He's also the co-author of the Risk-Driven Business Model and has advised leading companies around the world on innovation and strategic decision-making. We're delighted to have him here with us today for our Q&A session to discuss the Chief AI Officer program and what it will take to lead differently in the age of AI. Over to you, Professor Girotra, for any opening remarks as the questions come in. So I'm going to start pulling up the questions. I already see a few are popping in, but if you have any remarks, please feel free to.
Yeah, no, I think first, thanks, Mike, for having me here. Thanks to the Elite XE team for organizing this, and thanks to everyone who's joining in to find out more about the program. I think if I had to summarize my thoughts on AI, I think I can do them in two phrases and maybe a bonus phrase. I think most folks, of course, you've heard the hype about AI, but I think despite all the hype, despite all the valuations, AI is a lot bigger than most people imagine. And the second phrase I'll say, which almost has to go hand in hand, AI is a lot harder than most people expect. So I think both these statements are simultaneously true in the sense that, and of course, over the course of our next half an hour or so, I think my comments will fit in within these two sides of the coin. It's a lot bigger because people are mostly thinking of this as a technology that automates work or it changes you do X. Now machine will do X, you lose your job. That is such a limiting and incomplete view of everything we know about not just this technology, every previous technology. That's saying, oh, the internet is going to make the fax machine a little bit faster. So Barnes and Noble, a book retailer, will no longer need to have faxes, and the fax guys will lose their jobs and will use the emails instead of faxes. Is that what the internet did? No, it did way more. It didn't replace the fax machine with the email. It didn't replace the bike messenger with email. Yeah, sure, the bike messenger did lose their jobs, but guess what? It changed the face of how books were retailed, which was not a plain productivity innovation. It was entirely about what you mentioned, our best-selling book on business models, which is now 15 years old, just to be sure. Still remains the best-selling book on business models. But and before anyone gets too impressed, there's not too many books written on business models, but of the handful that are written, it remains the best-selling book. And I think the point we were making there, and I think is true for AI or any other technology, that yeah, productivity tends to be just the hygiene factor, the table stakes. The real gains come from people who re-architect, reinvent their businesses around the technology. Like I just gave that casual example on the internet, and most people do not have it in their sights. Even when it comes to productivity, productivity means doing more with less. Most people are thinking about the with less part, not the doing more part. So I think even on these, even on productivity, we are way under leveraging the technology, and then the real impact of these technologies is way more than what is in the common discourse. CEO after CEO comes out and says, "Oh, I'm going to replace my people with AI, and that's why I'm leading up my team." That is basically missing the entire point, and it doesn't even work because you suddenly have put people in a unhappy place. So if I had to put it differently, it's a lot bigger than most folks imagine, but achieving all of this is not a plug and play. It is not something you outsource to McKinsey to come make a deck, and then you get a nice gimmick. Even PricewaterhouseCoopers can't really do it for you. This is it's not something you can outsource. It is not something you can buy off the shelf from a technology company. This requires deep understanding of the context and marrying it with deep understanding of the technology. Both pieces are needed, and either companies do it, either the companies or folks in companies like perhaps many of our participants today who have deep knowledge of the context, marry it with deep knowledge of technology, and not just kind of the technical parts of technology. Frankly, much more so the economic aspects of technology, economic operational aspects of technology. Either they do it or the AI companies will learn your context and eat you alive. I think the odds are higher for folks in this room to get there first, but the race is on. So it's a lot bigger than people imagine and a lot harder than most people expect. Mike, I lost you, Mike.
Yep, for a second I was popped off there. So we had a few questions that popped up in the Q&A session, and there are a couple that are actually pretty, I wouldn't say aggressive, but they're definitely assertive. Um, Lucas from Berlin asks, why is this CAIO program better than the alternatives that are out there?
So there's a lot of alternatives out there. I'm not going to talk directly about other programs. And frankly, I'm a professor. I don't look at other programs also that much. But here is what I can tell you about the general information environment around any topic you want to learn. I think as a participant, you got to ask pretty directly. You need to, there's a lot of information out there, particularly free information. I could go even worse. Why do you even need a program? You could be on Twitter all day and learn everything there is to learn. And there is some measure of truth on that. And or you can go to LinkedIn and there are people posting stuff. Here are a few things to recognize about a program, stuff you read on the internet, etc., particularly around when it comes to AI. The question to ask yourself about any piece of information you read in today's information ecosystem is really ask who is the source and why are they giving you that information? On who is the source? There is what you want is someone who has expertise and perhaps some experience, either or, like at least one of the two. Now, when it comes to AI, and particularly what we are talking modern AI, almost no one has experience. Anyone who's leading a big transformation of AI in a successful way in a big company is not in the business of teaching courses, is in the business of doing the transformation. It's far more lucrative to do that. The only so next thing, and there are frankly no, because it's also new. How can anyone have any sustained experience? In fact, People who might have done one transformation have the risk of anecdata, which means they have one anecdote and they believe that's the data. So that doesn't even work in this context. And you don't have cases, you don't have best practices, you don't have books to follow, because anybody who's doing that is probably 5 years behind, which means they don't even know what AI is doing. So I think there's very little experience. There's a now. So the next thing you have to ask is, does the person have expertise? And there's the strange thing about the internet these days is everybody's an expert on whatever is the latest news. So people are expert on the Strait of Hormuz. Next week they're going to be experts on COVID. The next week they're going to be experts on the AI bubble. And there is a whole group of talking heads who are an expert on everything. When you're an expert on everything, you're not an expert on anything. So you've got to understand if there is expertise. And there I'm going to make a strong, almost as aggressive defense for us academics. There are a lot of people who become experts in other things, but there are, and many people even use academic titles. I went 1 week to spend at Cornell, and now I'm a Cornell professor or something. That's all bullshit. Sorry, excuse my language, but you have to be quite careful. But there are career professors. What they do is study a topic for their entire life. When it is not popular, when it is popular, they study it. That's it. And they're committed to their craft. They've spent their life studying it in good and bad times, and that gives you a certain perspective which is far beyond I think what flyby operators have. So number one is look at the source. Who's talking about this? Do they really have sustained expertise? Do they really have a senior faculty position full time, not some with some qualifier titles? Oh, I'm this kind of adjunct, affiliate, or a real position at something. So that is number one thing you want to test. But the more important thing to test is, and this concerns a lot of the information, you've got to ask, why are you getting the information? Microsoft runs great courses. OpenAI runs great courses. But are there an unbiased party to this transition? Not really. Follow the money. So you have either you have courses or materials by vendors. You've got to be a bit skeptical of them because obviously they have a product to sell. Or worse are the people on social media who also have a product to sell. It's not accurate information. It is provocation. It is winning your attention. It is playing into your fears. It can be Twitter University, WhatsApp University. You don't pay Twitter University or WhatsApp University. So the person who's producing the content there is incentivized to engage you in a certain way. Now, what engages people? Lies engage. We have a lot of evidence. Lies engage. Provocative lies that reinforce your opinions engage more than not. Things you want to talk about anyways. Oh, I don't really want to talk about AI too much, but I think I want to just ethics. It'll be really bad. Okay, I can give you a story to make you happy on social media. Social media will fund what you want to hear. So because that's the business model. So you will get. So you have to watch the incentives of what is coming out there also. So I think that's the general principle. Forget AI courses in every piece of information. You've got to go to people with expertise and got to go to people who don't really have anything to sell you besides accurate information. And again, to my community academics, we really, even if you asked us to say something for money, we really can't because we're not that controllable people. We are the kind of weirdos, nutcases who spend their life studying something or are really truly committed to the craft. So I think academic programs are different. And now if we look within academic other academic universities, etc., offering the programs, there too, I think there's a distinction. Of course, there are some good programs, but a lot of programs, and we at Cornell haven't done that. There have been a lot of aggressive third parties who have used brands of very famous universities, MIT, Chicago, to create programs which are frankly not really from the inside. I can tell you they're not programs by the real faculty in the real places. They're just often just oh, there is this institute at this place, and that is a cousin of a cousin of a cousin, and we can put the logo, and half the world won't realize what it is, and therefore we can pawn that off. Go Google the people listed on the program, see what they really do, and how much of their time is actually at Cornell, at the university. And finally, we have recorded programs too. It's hard to keep recorded programs up to date in this space. We try to, but therefore I think I think looking at live programs is going to give you a little bit more recency in this space. So that's my generic rant against the information environment. not just about this, but I do think it bothers me about the amount of misinformation and miseducation is out there. I'll give you another funny story. In the last week itself, I've had three senior executives at I think in my AI work at Cornell. This we didn't mention this. I run a lab called the Abundant Intelligence Lab, and before this, I was a founder of Cornell Tech, which is our campus in New York City. You can read up about that online, but. Uh, we had three, and I think by now I have worked with at least 50 of the Fortune 4 to 200 companies around AI. At least 50, 60, maybe getting a little bit bigger number now. And in the last week itself, I had three people talk to me about Mistral, which is a French company, has this great mad model, Chaton Rouge. Some much fat cat is the English translation of that name. And you know what it was? It's just pure misinformation, and it's a meme. But if you rely on automated AI bots reading random stuff of Twitter and then posting engagement posts on LinkedIn, which is what most of it is, you won't even know what's a joke and what's a reality. Or, oh, there is this MIT study which shows AI doesn't work. You know what? It was never a real MIT study. It was with some people who at some point attended MIT for a few days. And on top of it, it was based on 8 people being surveyed. And it caught on social media, and half the executives believe it is true. It's not. You need experts to separate the misinformation from the actual information. Uninterested, unbiased experts. And that is hard to find outside of proper courses. And there's a lot of drifting and bad stuff out there. Sorry, I'm in a
Wow.
slightly grumpy mood this morning. So, but some things bother me. Some things bother
No,
me
no.
when the world is, and particularly bothers me when people are misinformed and taken advantage of.
I totally appreciate that, Professor Girotra. And to tell you the truth, it's a real challenge. I mean, because as you rightfully point out, we're releasing frontier models on a weekly basis. So AI is changing rapidly. Not only is AI changing rapidly, we're also having governments starting to regulate, and the regulatory environment, the apparatus. It's very difficult to navigate that and to understand how this is going to change everything, and then to actually rely on either pre-recorded assets that were done a year, 2 years ago, or to actually rely on people that are supposedly, really paying attention to how quickly this space is changing. It's definitely something to keep in mind. There are about 7 questions that came in after Lucas's question, so I'm going to actually come in and read you the next question, which comes in from Basil. The question is the pace at which AI is being developed, how relevant will the learning and strategies of this course
Hmm.
be in the next 6 to 8 months? And I think this is a great question. And I thought right after the question we just got from Lucas, I think Basil's question is a good one to follow up with.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I'll try to be shorter this time because I want to get to more questions. I think Basil, I think the first I will see your question and raise it. We don't want to teach you stuff that is going to be relevant 6 to 8 months, but hopefully 3 to 4 years after the course. Because I assume unless you're coming back to our next iteration, we do these often enough. This has to go longer. And any formal education, we're not in the business of vocational education, which tells you which button to press in which piece of software. It's about giving you fundamentals that should last even longer. So the challenge is even harder than what the question presumes. How do we get to it? Now, the good and bad news. Our course has several components, but two big classes of components. The first is informational content on where the technology is. The second is how are you going to deploy the technology to make the magic happen? Now, while the core, what the technology is, and in both cases, we try to teach you stuff that is going to be very long lasting. When it comes to technology challenges, okay, I taught you what the capabilities are today, they're going to be different tomorrow. You know what? We teach you the capabilities, but more importantly, we teach you a framework of mapping out the capabilities. We'll teach you the basic idea on capabilities are AI capabilities vary widely across different tasks, modalities, contexts. We'll give you a framework to think about the jagged frontier of capabilities or literally draw it. What are the kinds of cognitive capabilities of any form of intelligence that we would make could have. Now we will be at a certain place in that think of it in a map that we'll give you. We will mark that place today, but we're also giving you the map so you can plot where it goes. And that is insofar as the technical capabilities are concerned. But here is the better part. Most of the course is about leveraging technology. And while and you'd be surprised, most of what I teach will be about leveraging technology. Or I even said it earlier that the biggest prize is business model innovation, not really just using the internet to replace the fax machine or the bike messenger. So now those kind of principles, how business models evolve, how technology typically changes processes, those principles tend to be timeless. Those principles tend to be far more robust, not just robust to the evolutions of AI, but they tend to be robust across technologies. For example, we will talk about business model innovations that are possible. One of the business model innovations possible is hyper personalization. You know what? That's not a new thing. We've been trying to create more personalized products for the last 50 years. The internet helped us in one aspect of personalization. We could reach customers one by one. 3D printing helped us. Modularity of products helped us. The AI will help us personalize the knowledge component or the digital component of products. So once we take this business economics perspective, you will see that 80-90% of what we are talking about is conceptual stuff that is much more long lasting than any particular technology. I wrote the book on business models 15 years back. A lot of it is still relevant because it is the same principles that apply. We will often invoke previous generations of abundance technologies like the industrial revolution, other things to talk about it. Even what happened in the industrial revolution is completely relevant to the debates today. So I think what academics and what we do is we view the world in a level of abstraction and a level of depth that allows us to connect across patterns. And that tends to be the whole point of going abstract, is not just making you deeper, but also making you in a way more conceptual that survives the news of the day. So news of the day you can get on the news channels. Sometimes truth, sometimes not truth, but you can. But this conceptual way of thinking, the conceptual ideas around how technology influences businesses, societies, those ideas are robust to every generation of technology. And even where technology is changing, we will give you a framework to map and keep in mind what is happening. In fact, within our program of 6 months or so, we typically do AI capabilities at the start. And then towards the end, we bring in one of my colleagues, generally a person who's at a leading lab at DeepMind or OpenAI or Anthropic, to really come and say, okay, talk of the news of the day. So even within the program, we do some of that. But the bigger point is we teach you frameworks around technology capabilities and how they impact the world, which are much more robust to any particular generation of technology. Otherwise, it wouldn't be education. Otherwise, it would be news.
And Professor Girotra, one of the things that's really important about the answer that you just shared there is that as a CAIO officer, your challenge is really actually communicating just as much as it's actually guiding and leading. And the communication really is about helping people connect what they've understood in the past and what things have actually existed to how to think about this in the present. So by giving these kinds of tools and making these connections and doing the right things and connecting the frameworks and the lessons of the past and the insights from the past to the application in the present and into the future, this is really part of the work that's going to happen as this is evolving around us. So I really appreciate that answer.
And remember, our program gives you a chance to apply it right then and there. So one thing which
Mm,
is distinctive about what we do is you can talk about anything, but you don't really learn till you apply it on something that matters to you. Not in some
mm.
random homework, not in some make-believe case. You can all come and listen to 2 hour sessions and clap and go, and that would be watching TV. That's not how learning happens, full learning. That is an important part of learning, but probably one third of the total learning. The next third happens by doing it. And the next third happens by getting feedback on it and redoing it. And that's so our program is in a way a studio format, which means, and very few online programs or flyby certificates, etc., are because they don't want to give people too much work because they want most people to just come in and get some certificate and then the certificate loses its value. Our program has homework in the sense that everything we learn, you have to make that connection not in an arbitrary way. Here is the framework we learned. Now, this is how it's going to change my industry. If your industry is design, this is how it's going to change it. If you're an architect, this is how it's going to change the way buildings are designed, and this is how my place in the world will be in the future. So you will write that blueprint for your domain of interest, and that is, I think, again, so that connection will happen right away. It is not that you'll wait for that connection to happen in the future, and really making that connection will be the true meta learning from everything we do in the program.
Really appreciate that. There are two more questions. We only have a few more minutes, so I want to be very thoughtful of the time. From Taufik actually asks a question, which is building on the question that you just answered. How does this help us professionally as AI is still in infant stages, and how well will this certificate help us get recognized in the market for real potential opportunities?
Yeah, I think it is correct that AI is in the infant stages, but not infant in terms of what the technology can do. The technology is getting pretty advanced. I would say at least a teenager. The real issue is putting that teenager to work. So I think in terms of getting economic value out of the technology, we are indeed in the infant stage. And I think the hope of training people in this program is they will be those bridges which can deploy the technology really to make the magic happen in their domains. So that's, I think, where we are, what the objective is. So in my mind, insofar as the technology is not ready, that's not true. There's a lot of work to be done to even use, frankly, the technology that was built 4 or 5 years back. To deploy it, we're probably using 2% of what could be done with these technologies, including generative AI, which is your grandpa's AI now. And let's not even get into the deeper adaptive or exploratory agents that we've been able to make in the last 6 to 8 months. So lots of stuff can be done in the lab, huge amount of work left to kind of educate deploying this in the real world. So I think the opportunity is not nascent right now. The opportunity is ripe for the picking. It is a sweet spot. It is the fruit is ripe. Somebody has to come get it. Now, how will the program help you with these things? I'm going to say something controversial and something which people might not even like and something which might be against what we do. I think a lot of people think, oh, the world is going to be about certifications. Oh, I came to MIT, I came to Cornell, one of these top, we are, I think, top three universities in AI in the world would be Stanford, Berkeley, MIT, Cornell, maybe these three, four every year. And we generally kind of are in the higher part of that group. So, okay, we have all these schools and I'll get a certification from them and then I'll get a job because I have a Cornell certification. I think the world is shifting. People care about what you can actually do rather than what degree or piece of paper you carry. And I think your best certification, and particularly your best, so we will of course give you a Cornell certificate. Our certificates are far rarer and harder to get than many of the even other institutes I mentioned, which have created programs here and there. So I think, of course, we'll give you a certificate. It does have some signaling value, but I think the far bigger signaling value would be what can you do? So increasingly, and this is true maybe more in the US, how does Anthropic or one of these OpenAI, which are truly the leading companies in the world, how are they interviewing people? They're not looking at your credentials. They're like, what can you do? Show me some work product. And that's what we're doing in the course. More important than the certificate is your blueprint that you will write. That is your actual what you can do. So I think that's what employers care about, what you can do for them, not so much about their degrees or certificates as much anymore. And I know it's a little bit different globally, but I think that's where the world is going. So we'll not only give you a certificate, which other people can also give you, but hopefully we'll give you evidence, a portfolio that will show what you can do. And you will still have to create the portfolio. We will create some ecosystem to help you start creating your portfolio. You got to create more of a portfolio, and that's how you get the prize job. Not hoping somebody will recognize a degree and give it to you today.
Professor Girotra, we're at the edge of time. I'm going to ask this last question. If we don't have time, then I will get your answer and respond to it. But the question was, and you answered it partly. How much of the core tech knowledge will one need to have for this? I'm an architect, someone who's trained and designed buildings by qualification, and for over 26 years, I'm part of the management of one of India's largest design consultancy firms. How do you see this program being relevant for someone like me? I know we're at the edge of time. If we don't
I can
have
give
time,
this answer in 30 seconds. None.
okay.
Here is the amount of technology knowledge you need. You can open an app on a computer. You can type. And much more importantly, you know a context. You know a context. You know how architecture works. You know how design consultancy works. So on the design consultancy, I need the 26 years of experience. On everything else, as long as you can use the computer, you can use it. My 30 seconds are up. But for those who want to listen, why? Because this technology is different than previous technologies in the sense that it is accessible through natural language. So there is no deep entry barrier into going and using things. You can and now to be sure, there are some technical skills needed to build AI products. That's not what this program is about. This program is much more about someone who learns how to leverage AI to redesign and figure out how design consultancy firms will look in the next 10 years. So I do need a lot of contextual knowledge, or the more contextual knowledge you have, more experience you have, that helps us. But insofar as technology, as long as you can turn on a computer and type, you're good to go. And I'm being a little bit facetious. You also need the agency, the spirit to try and be a little bit relentless. So context, agency dominate any kind of technical skills one needs. And again, to clarify, this is not a program which will teach you how to build an AI app. That program, that is stuff actually you can ask AI to teach you. But how to really deploy AI to change industries requires deep contextual knowledge and a framework like conceptual perspective on technology, neither of which are available to AI or to the general public. You bring the contextual knowledge, I bring the frameworks. We get it together and make the magic happen.
Professor Girotra, this was amazing. This was a very fun conversation, and as always, it's so delightful to be on the stage with you. Have a lovely day ahead, and thanks everyone for attending.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.